Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called Why America Once Feared the Netherlands. I think at one point in history, the Netherlands were fearsome conquerors, so it wouldn't surprise me why everyone was scared of them. But let's check it out and comment, like and subscribe.
This is the Netherlands. It's one of the smallest countries on Earth. So how did such a small country have enough power to shape early America? And why did America fear them? To understand this, we need to go back 400 years, when the Netherlands became a superpower. Okay, so back in 1602, the Netherlands did something absolutely insane. Look at this map. See all those lines crisscrossing the world?
That's
the Dutch Empire.
That's
Back
crazy.
then, they controlled global trade. Indonesia, Africa, America, they were everywhere. What's crazy is they did this with a company, not a government. They created a super big company with its own army, its own warships, and it could even start wars. This company was called the Dutch East India Company, and it made the Netherlands so powerful that Britain and early America were terrified. The Dutch had more ships than the British Navy, more money than most countries, and weren't afraid to use them.
Yeah.
Other countries would send one ship at a time to trade and pray it didn't sink. The Dutch sent 200 ships all at once.
Well, that's crazy.
Wait, how many ships are we sending this year? 200. 200? That's more than Spain sends in 5 years.
Oh my god.
Clever, isn't it? While they send one ship and cross their fingers, we send so many that we don't even care if we lose a few. What if pirates attack us?
They don't care.
Our ships have more cannons than most countries' entire navies. Pirates see us and run away screaming.
That's
We're
true.
not just selling stuff anymore, are we? Nope, we're an empire now, baby. By 1650, Dutch...
I guess if you're surrounded by water, though, as in the Netherlands, you probably have to find a way to either, fight it or fight them or join them. So I think maybe it's not that surprising that they perfected ships because, again, they're surrounded by water.
Ships were everywhere. They controlled the spice trade from Indonesia, they owned trading posts in India, they had colonies in South Africa and the Caribbean. And guess what their secret weapon was? Ready for this? No, not guns, not more ships. It was being nice to people. Crazy, right? While other countries were kicking out Jewish people and being mean to anyone who believed different things, Amsterdam said, "Come on in, everyone's welcome." Refugees came and brought banking skills. French people came and brought crafting skills. Germans came with trade connections. Everyone brought something useful, and Amsterdam became the richest city in Europe almost overnight. Then in 1667, the Dutch did something so bold, it still sounds fake. They sailed their warships right into England's backyard, up the Thames River, and destroyed England's best ships. They even stole one and sailed it back home like a boss. But the Dutch weren't done yet. They were about to invent something even more powerful than warships.
No idea what could it be.
Okay, so in 1624, Dutch merchants bought Manhattan Island from the Lenape people. They traded some...
The concept of buying a whole island, a country buying an island, I know it was done, but I think it's just mind-blowing to me, to my modern mind. It's just crazy.
Cloth, beads, and tools for it. Today, that same land is worth over $1 trillion.
It's
that
crazy.
Might just be the best deal in history. Now, here's where the Dutch were different from everyone else. Spanish colonists enslaved the native people. British colonists pushed them away and stole all their land. But the Dutch were nice to everyone and just wanted to trade with them so everyone could make money together. Why fight when you could make friends and get rich? A guy called Peter Minute ran the colony, and even he couldn't believe how crazy the rules were. I mean, they weren't even he didn't mind what religion people were. Different cultures were protected by law. Wait, so we're just letting everyone worship however they want? Yep, Jews, Catholics, Protestants, anyone who wants to trade. But the English colonies to the north are hanging people who believe different things.
Yeah.
And how is their economy doing?
Poorly.
Terrible, actually. Exactly. Being nice to people is good for business. But the other colonies are gonna call us crazy. What's that? I couldn't hear you over all this money we're making.
They're
By 1640, New Amsterdam, that's what New York was called at first, was unlike any place on earth. 18 different languages were spoken in the streets. Black people, some enslaved, some free, lived and worked there. Jewish merchants traded to German craftsmen next to Dutch sailors. Other European colonies were very strict about religion. Everyone had to be the same. But New Amsterdam was complete chaos. And it was working.
In a good way.
The city's streets followed the natural waterways, just like back in the Netherlands. They built canals, they built a trading spot that would later become Wall Street, and because they treated Native Americans like business partners, not enemies, nobody shot arrows at them, unlike in the Wild West.
The
Dutch learned their languages. They made fair deals. They traded European stuff for beaver furs and stuff. While other colonies were fighting constant wars, New Amsterdam was getting rich through teamwork. Then, in 1664, 4 British warships showed up and said, "This is ours now." The Dutch colonists looked around. They were outnumbered, nobody from the Netherlands was coming to help. So they just gave up, without fighting. The British renamed it New York, but they couldn't change what the Dutch had built. The tolerance, the diversity, the let's make money attitude, it was
I wonder how they lost, because they had the ships. How come they didn't fight?
All baked into the city forever. Meanwhile, back in Amsterdam, Dutch bankers were inventing something that would change the world. Okay, this next part is really important, and also kinda wild. In 1602, Amsterdam invented the stock market. This was genius, and it had never been done before. The Dutch East India Company raised 6.5 million guilders. That's like raising billions today. Suddenly, regular people, not just kings, could get rich. Wait, you need money to build a ship? Yep, ships are expensive. But if you give me some money now, I will give you more money when I sell the spices. So I just hand you money and hope you come back? That's right. Think of it like this. If you give me 5 guilders now, I come back with spices, sell them for a huge profit, and give you 7 guilders back. Wait, so I make money without doing any of the work? Now you're getting it! Welcome to capitalism, buddy! And Amsterdam bankers also figured out that money is more powerful than armies. Because armies need money. Soldiers don't work for free. Cannons cost money, ships cost money. So if you control the money, you basically control everything. Amsterdam had basically become Europe's bank. See this? When England needed cash for wars, they went to Amsterdam to borrow it. When France ran out of money, Dutch banks loaned them some. Every major power on this map owed the Dutch money. The Dutch had become the Bank of Europe. England was to borrow $2 million for their war with Spain. Ooh, nice. We'll charge them interest and make a fat profit. Exactly. Better than spice trading. I don't have to worry about ships sinking or pirates. And if they lose the war? Not our problem. They still have to pay us back. Wait, so we basically own a piece of England right now? Yep, but let's not tell them that. By 1700, Amsterdam controlled Europe's money. If you made Amsterdam mad, they could cut you off from loans, and without money, you couldn't do anything. England learned this the hard way. Even though they had the world's biggest navy, they needed Dutch money to pay for it. If Amsterdam said, no more loans, no more loans, England would be in big trouble. Then, in the 1770s, something happened that would make Britain really mad. Some rebellious American colonists started demanding freedom. And the canny Dutch saw another chance to make some money.
They're always looking for make more money.
So Britain was fighting the American colonists who wanted independence. Yeah, everybody knows that. But what you didn't know was that the Dutch were helping America big time. Dutch merchants were sneaking weapons to George Washington's army. They were also loaning America tons of money. Britain called this treason, the Dutch called it good business.
It's business.
Without Dutch help, the American Revolution would have failed in like 6 months. In 1776, American colonists declared independence, and Dutch weapon sellers immediately got to work. Ships loaded with gunpowder sailed from Amsterdam to Dutch islands in the Caribbean. From there, smaller boats smuggled the weapons to American rebels. The British knew full well what was happening, but they couldn't stop it. The Dutch Navy was still super powerful. If Britain attacked Dutch ships, they'd start another war.
Your Majesty, the Dutch are giving weapons to the rebels.
King George.
Can we sink their ships?
Well, their navy could destroy half our fleet if we tried.
Then blockade their ports.
They control more ports than we do, sir.
Yeah.
Fine, seize their money.
We can't. We owe them millions. If we steal from them, they'll demand we pay everything back immediately. That would bankrupt England.
So we just sit here and watch them destroy our empire?
Sadly,
Unless you want to fight 2 wars at the same time?
I hate the Dutch. By 1780, the Dutch had loaned America enough money to buy millions of muskets, thousands of cannons, and basically everything an army needs. But then, an American ship sailed into the harbor of a tiny little Caribbean island called St. Eustatius. It was showing off its brand new Stars and Stripes flag. When that happened, the Dutch fort fired a cannon salute to say hello. This was massive. It was the first time any foreign country recognized America as a real nation. Britain got so mad about this, they started a whole new war with the Dutch, called the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War. Basically to stop them giving money to America. They attacked Dutch ships, seized their Caribbean islands, and tried to bankrupt Amsterdam's banks. But it was too late. The damage was done. America already had enough weapons and cash to win, and fighting the Dutch and the Americans at the same time stretched them too thin. By 1784, Britain had lost. American leaders had won their independence.
America! Hooray! Woohoo! All right!
And now they had to build a brand new country. And because the Netherlands were so feared and powerful, they decided to base America's financial system on Amsterdam's. So Alexander Hamilton, who was a founding father of America, traveled to Amsterdam to study their banking system. He walked through the stock exchange, asking how it all worked. Wait, so your money just grows by itself? Yep, we don't just stuff gold in a vault like kings do. We put it to work.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
We make loans, we invest, the money makes more money. And anyone can do this? Not just rich people? A farmer with a little bit of money has the same chance as a prince with a fortune.
Oh, wow,
Surely
the American
that
dream.
would never work in Europe, though. They care too much about fancy titles and royal blood. Which is precisely why Amsterdam got rich, while other countries stayed broke. America needs this. We don't have kings holding us back. Then you'll be more powerful than all of us. We're stuck with old world thinking. You're not. By 1800, New York looked super Dutch. The streets still followed these old Dutch canal patterns. Wall Street was built in the exact same spot where Dutch merchants used to trade. Trinity Church stood where Dutch ministers used to preach. Even the Declaration of Independence borrowed ideas from a Dutch document written 200 years earlier.
Oh my God,
Thomas
really?
Jefferson, another founding father guy, had studied Dutch political ideas before writing it. And the Dutch influence didn't stop in New York. In 1847, a group of Dutch settlers founded a town in Michigan and called it Holland. Today, it still feels like you're walking through the Netherlands. Windmills, tulip festivals, Dutch architecture everywhere. It's basically a little piece of Amsterdam dropped right into the Midwest. By 1850, America's economy had grown bigger than the Netherlands. And by 1900, Wall Street controlled more money than Amsterdam could dream of. The incy-wincy country that Britain and the old America once feared had created a giant.
A monster.
Insane, right? But you know what's even wilder? North Korea. Over there, every family has to collect 1 ton of human poop every single year by law. Click here to learn the crazy history of North Korea.
What?
I'll see you over there.
That took a turn that I wasn't expecting. Wow, I think it's kind of, the whole lesson out of all of this, I don't know if I'm taking the right lessons, but it's funny that, the Dutch, and I'm seeing this obviously with it's kind of a joke, but I'm, seeing this, the Dutch, I think, helped, shape, especially I think when it comes to New York, they helped shape, I think, a lot of parts and a lot of things about how the U.S., because obviously the U.S. is a superpower in this day and age, and it has been for centuries at this point. But I didn't really, I don't think I could grasp how much of an influence the Netherlands had on the shaping, I think, of the American country, of the United States as a country. Because again, it was a new nation by this point, and people had to figure things out. How this country is going to look like? How are we going to, what's the tenet of what being an American actually means? And, what's the Constitution is going to look like? Or what's the economical model going to look like? And all of that stuff. So I hadn't actually, I don't think I know, again, maybe I sort of, I'm gonna know, but I think you sort of, when you see it like this, sort of is perfectly illustrated, and you get to see how, again, I don't think it could have been possible to have, the massive sort of, the huge thing that the United States is, in this day and age. I don't think you can get there without the Netherlands, which I think it's wild to think of. I mean, maybe again, if you think about it, the Netherlands it's a small country, but if you think about it, again, they're so incredibly powerful on their own, and they had also their empire. So maybe it's not that weird. But I think maybe because you're used to how obviously because of the history. I thought of you associate more the United States. You kind of associate this more with the UK. And with Britain in general, because obviously of the huge history. But, you hadn't thought of, but there was such a huge, I think, Dutch influence as well. And all because of New York, which I think it always expanded up to the rest of the country. But maybe I think makes sense because they had, it was probably the closest. I think, imagine if they had done this and, I don't know, if the Dutch had arrived, they hadn't bought Manhattan, they bought, I don't know, they bought Florida, or they bought, I don't know, South Carolina. How things would be, in this modern time, if things have gone a little bit different, they had decided to purchase another piece of land and not that. I don't know, I just think it's crazy. But maybe I think it was easier back in those days because obviously the natives were there. But, the United States, I think, as a country, or what would become the United States, as a territory, it wasn't that populated. All the west part was not, there was nothing there. So I think maybe it was a little bit easier to sort of maintain a little bit more influence. Obviously, you have less people to control and fewer people to control. So maybe that's why it wasn't that much of a big deal for the Dutch, because they were smaller as well. So it's fine. We have a small population here, as by nature, because our country is just small, and we can control other territories as well to the other side of the Atlantic, and it's not going to be that's not going to be such a big deal. But ultimately, what I was going at this is that you see it, and it's great. Obviously, thankfully, again, apparently the United States has a lot to thank the Dutch for. But it's sort of, they gave them, I think, the tools, and they explained how the whole thing worked, and they looked to the Netherlands as I think, as something you want to replicate, as something that's, a massive influence, and it's going to be, I want to be them as a role model for what I hope one day to become. And that's all very nice. That's great. However, I'm wondering how the Dutch feel or felt at some point afterwards, because it's sort of the student, surpasses the master in a way. So again, that's what I was going with. I don't know how they would feel about this. I don't know how the Dutch person feels in this, about this right now. Probably they don't care. They're, they have their own things. We have more concerning, matters at hand than worrying about, wow, the U.S. it's right now such a huge thing because of us. Probably again, they have their own thing. They're not, the Americans are not living rent free in Dutch people's heads. But I think, again, if you think about it, sort of, if you do the exercise of, let's think about things, reflecting on things, I think that's where I would love to know how the Dutch feel about this. As in, again, it wouldn't be such a big deal. And, I mean, the United States as a country, as a global superpower, it probably wouldn't have arrived to this point if it hadn't been for the Dutch. So I think they have a lot to, I don't know, well, who would you think? Well, yeah, there's probably a lot to thank the Dutch for, but I don't know, I don't think they're that sort of, I don't know, I don't think they get a lot of credit. Again, maybe that's just me, but I think they should probably get more credit that they usually do. because again, it's just sort of easily forgotten, and it's just maybe things that are sort of, because you kind of, you remember, and history tells you this. But when you look at the illustration and you see the little, obviously the cartoons are obviously they're over exemplified, but I think it does go, it makes a good point of showing you how things were back in those days. As in, Alexander Hamilton went over there to see how how this whole trading thing works. How do you do the economy? And they sort of try to replicate that. I think it's crazy. And also one of the things that it was I think, it's something to, again, maybe it's good. Well, maybe now because we're not getting into this kind of conflicts in this particular sort of modern times. But I think it's the approach that they took was really, when it came to wars and conquering in general, well, not conquering, because they were just sort of, it's more about the money. I think other sort of superpowers back in in the 1600s, 1700s, when they were sort of they had their whole empires and all other European countries and territories. When they were the approach towards being emperors of the world and having all those other territories, their approach, I think, was very much of the let's if there's people here already, we're gonna subjugate them. I know we're gonna be you have to conquer them, and you have to either sort of kill them or subject them to your own rule, or again it's just like bringing more conflict. It wasn't a peaceful existence between both nations or both territories or whatever it is that you're fighting with. So I think, and all of them were like that. And also, again, a huge aspect of this was religion, of course. Again, all of those European countries and all those those superpowers, when it came to having an empire in other parts of the world, of course they wanted, I think, part of the whole sort of, and I'm talking about conquering, but maybe I'm using the word a little bit, broadly, is, they wanted to convert everyone, we want to convert, everyone to our own religion, because I think it's important to, expand, our religion ourselves or whatever. So that was, I think, more or less the approach, even though, again, some of them didn't specifically, some of them just killed them already. It's instead of converting, whatever. But I think that was mostly the point. It was either converting or it was either kill them. But it was more about, again, conquering in the sense of I'm bigger than you and I hold the power over you. So, and of course, the huge aspect of religion, because it was very important back in that time period. That is really, I think is really funny that the Netherlands were just, no, we don't care about the principles, because I think I see those kind of things like the religion thing and all the principles that they had. It was more about the moral failing of oh no, their culture is so different to ours, so we have to convert it to our own sort of culture, whether that is religion, culture, or whatever, or we have to kill them. But I think it's funny that the Dutch we don't really care what you do with your life, we don't care what you believe in, we don't care about your customs, we don't care about your traditions. We only care about the money. It's a whole thing. So it's really, again, maybe and apparently it worked for them. It worked very well. That's how they became so rich. But it's how whether in the Europe, everyone was sort of they had all these trouble with their overseas territories, and they were sort of, we just do not care. We do whatever, as long as you're giving us money and you're making us rich. Do whatever, we don't care. We can trade with anyone. So it's really, they were the true capitalism, that it was in the Netherlands, which I think is really funny to think about this in this sort of day and age, because you associate the United States with that. So not specifically with the Netherlands, but how it came to be is because they tried to replicate the Dutch system, in which they don't really, whatever, we don't care. It's just about the money, and that's how you get more money. Not by being, we don't really, money speaks, basically, which I think, never happened truer in the 1600s, 1700s for the Dutch. And I think that was an interesting approach to take, especially when you're surrounded by all these other countries and all these territories. Technically, they weren't countries, a lot of these, they were territories back in those days. But instead of going I think the conflict sort of approach, they were, no, money speaks, and that's the only thing. It's the only thing we believe in. That's our moral, money. So again, it's really interesting and quite funny, I think, you think about it, and I think compare everything in this modern times. And that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.